Dolores always said the same thing. I'm doing nothing. The subconscious is doing the healing. I'm just the facilitator who asks the questions. She would speak directly to the subconscious and ask it to heal. It was profound and powerful. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today we're finally returning to Dolores Cannon and the Cannon Files. You know, it's been a while since I covered Dolores Cannon. I read many of her books on the channel and was politely asked to remove them. But in that process, learned so much. There's so much information in Dolores Cannon's books, and I wanted to do another deep dive on it. For a moment, I want you to see a woman sitting in a dark room. She says, I want you to go back to the time and place that your subconscious wants you to see. The client she's speaking to, their breathing changes, it deepens, it slows, the face goes slack in a way that is different from sleep. Muscles release attention the client was unaware of carrying. The eyelids flutter. And then in a voice that sounds different from the voice the client arrived with, quieter, more certain, as if coming from a deeper room inside the same house, the client begins to speak. The woman has seen this shift thousands of times. The moment the conscious mind releases its grip and something deeper takes over. Something that speaks with a different cadence, a different vocabulary, a different quality of authority. Something that seems to know more than the person lying in the chair has any right to know. She's learned to recognize the exact moment the transition occurs, a subtle change in breathing, a softening of the facial muscles, a quality of stillness that descends over the body like a curtain falling. When the curtain falls, the session truly begins. They describe a place that has nothing to do with Arkansas. A vast chamber, no walls, no ceiling, light that comes from everywhere and nowhere. Beings that have no bodies, presences, intelligences, luminous forms that communicate without language, a council, a decision being made, a planet in trouble, a small blue world on the far edge of an unremarkable galaxy that has just done something unprecedented. It has split the atom. It has cracked open the building blocks of matter, and the crack has ripped outward through dimensions and densities, through layers of reality that the inhabitants of the small blue world have no idea exist. The beings in the council are alarmed. The damage is spreading. Something must be done. But there is a law, a directive that is older than any civilization in that chamber, that forbids direct interference with the free will of any sentient species. They cannot intervene. They cannot set foot on the surface. They cannot reveal themselves. They cannot stop the inhabitants of the small blue world from destroying themselves and damaging the surrounding dimensions in the process unless they can find another way. The client pauses. The tape recorder keeps turning. The elderly woman writes a note on her legal pad. She's heard this before. She's heard it from dozens of people across decades of sessions in countries around the world. Different clients, different backgrounds, different belief systems, zero contact with each other. And they keep describing the same counsel, the same decision, the same plan. The plan is this. Ask for volunteers. Souls from across the cosmos, from other planets, other dimensions, other densities of existence, who are willing to incarnate on the small blue world as human beings. They will enter through the normal birth process. Their memories will be wiped. They will live ordinary lives, but the frequency they carry, the vibration of the higher dimensions they come from, will raise the consciousness of the planet from the inside out. They will be seeds of light planted in a field of darkness, and they will have no idea what they are. The woman's name is Dolores Cannon. She is 70 years old, a retired Navy wife from the Ozarks Mountains. She's been conducting these sessions for over 30 years, and the story emerging from the reclining chair in her small room in Huntsville, Arkansas, is the same story that has been emerging from reclining chairs across the world for decades, told by people who have never met, who've never even read each other's accounts, and who are, to all appearances, as surprised by what they are saying as the woman writing it down. Dolores Cannon was born Dolores Eileen Taylor in St. Louis, Missouri on April 15, 1931. She completed her education at 16. She married Johnny Cannon in 1951, a career Navy electronics technician from Kansas City, and spent the next 21 years as a military wife, moving between bases around the world, raising 4 children, adapting to the rhythms of a life organized entirely around her husband's service. In the late 1960s, while Johnny was stationed at a naval base in Texas, the couple began experimenting with hypnosis, initially for practical purposes, helping people with weight control and smoking cessation. Then a doctor asked them to use hypnosis on a patient with an eating disorder. Under trance, the patient suddenly stopped talking about food and began describing in vivid detail a life as a flapper in 1920 Chicago. Over the following months of sessions, she described 5 distinct past life incarnations, each with its own voice, its own mannerisms, its own emotional texture. The Cannons were stunned. Nothing in their background had prepared them for this. They were a Navy family. Their world was barracks and commissaries and PTA meetings and the Veterans Foreign Wars Auxiliary, where Dolores would later serve as president of Post 2956 in Springdale, Arkansas. Past life regression belonged to a universe they had never inhabited. And then later that same year, a drunk driver nearly killed Johnny on his way to the naval base. The accident left him a partial amputee, confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. The family relocated to the hills of Madison County, Arkansas, where they could survive on a military pension. Dolores spent the next decade focused on caregiving and raising children. Her explorations in hypnosis went dormant. In the late 70s, while her children were grown and Johnny more stable, Dolores resumed. She began taking clients in her small town. Anyone who would come, anyone with any kind of problem. And she started taking them deeper. While most hypnotists work in light trance states, Dolores developed a method for guiding clients into what she called the somnambulistic state, the deepest level of hypnosis, the theta state normally experienced only in the moments before falling asleep and before waking up. Most practitioners avoid this depth. Dolores sought it deliberately because at this depth something extraordinary happened. The clients stopped talking about their current problems and started talking about lives they had never lived, places they had never visited, and knowledge they had no way of possessing. She called her method Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, or QHHT. And for the next 35 years, until her death on October 18, 2014, she used it with thousands of clients across dozens of countries, producing 17 books, a publishing company, a global network of trained practitioners, and a body of information so vast and internally consistent that it constitutes one of the most detailed metaphysical cosmologies ever assembled by a single researcher. The scope of her bibliography alone is staggering. Conversations with Nostradamus, 3 volumes, picked up by CBS for a television special, claiming direct temporal contact with the living Nostradamus in the 16th century France, Jesus and the Essenes, and they walked with Jesus. Detailed accounts of Christ's training and teaching from clients who described past lives in the Essene community. Between death and life. A comprehensive map of what consciousness experiences between incarnations. The custodians. A reframing of the abduction phenomenon through the lens of voluntary soul agreements. Keepers of the Garden and Legacy from the Stars, exploration of Earth's creation as a living library seeded by extraterrestrial intelligence. A Soul Remembers Hiroshima, a single client's account of dying in the atomic blast, described in detail so vivid and historically specific that researchers found it deeply unsettling. The 5-volume Convoluted Universe series, the most complex metaphysical territory she mapped, covering parallel realities, the nature of time, the mechanics of dimensional travel, and the creation of DNA as a cosmic technology. The search for hidden sacred knowledge. Her final manuscript, published posthumously, exploring the ancient mystery schools and the sacred knowledge they preserved. 17 books, translated into more than 20 languages, international bestsellers, especially in Russia and Eastern Europe, all of them produced by a grandmother from the Ozark Mountains who was nearly 50 before she began and who funded her early research on a military pension. And I want to pause and share something personal before we go deeper. When I started this channel, like I said before, I became popular for reading Dolores Cannon's work. Her books, The Three Waves of the Volunteers, the Convoluted Universe series, Between Death and Life. I would read passages, discuss implications, explore the cosmology she had assembled across decades of sessions. I was politely asked to remove that content, and I respect that completely. Dolores' family and her organization have the right to protect her intellectual property, and I was just excited to read it. But the material changed me. What I encountered in Dolores Cannon's work shaped the direction of this channel in ways that are still active today. The framework of volunteers incarnating to raise consciousness, the concept of the new earth as a dimensional shift, the understanding of the subconscious as an omniscient aspect of each individual. These ideas became part of the foundation I built on, and the thing that convinced me, the thing that still convinced me, is the convergence. This is the single most important element of Dolores Cannon's work. The reason her material deserves serious investigation rather than casual dismissal. Across nearly 50 years of sessions with thousands of clients who had zero contact with each other, who lived in different countries, who came from different cultures, different religions, different educational backgrounds, different levels of familiarity with metaphysical concepts, the same information kept emerging independently, consistently, in language so similar that Dolores herself was often more surprised than the clients. A woman in Arkansas would describe a council of light beings making a decision about Earth. A man in England 3 years later, having never heard of the Arkansas session, would describe the same council, the same decision, the same terminology. A teenager in Japan would describe the experience of volunteering to incarnate on Earth using the same framework. The same description of memory being wiped. The same description of the difficulty of adjusting to physical density. The same description of carrying a frequency that would raise consciousness simply through presence that a retiree in New Zealand had described a decade earlier. If one person under hypnosis describes an elaborate cosmology, that is interesting, but easily dismissed. The subconscious mind is creative. It generates a narrative. It constructs worlds. One person's account proves nothing except that the human imagination is powerful. But when hundreds of people across decades, across continents, with zero coordination describe the same cosmology in the same language, that is a different kind of evidence. That is a pattern, and patterns demand investigation. There are three possible explanations for this convergence, and the intellectual honesty requires presenting all three. The first, the information is real. The subconscious that Dolores contacted in each session is accessing genuine cosmic knowledge, a field of information that exists independently of the individual, and that different individuals access the same way different radios pick up the same broadcast. The convergence occurs because the information is objectively real, and everyone who reaches the right depth receives the same signal. The second, the convergence reflects shared archetypes in the collective unconscious. Carl Jung proposed that all human beings share a layer of the psyche that contains universal symbols, narratives, and patterns. Under deep hypnosis, clients may be accessing the shared layer and expressing its contents in the language and imagery of their era. The convergence is real, but its source is psychological rather than cosmic. The third, the facilitator shaped the responses. Dolores' questions, however open-minded, may carry assumptions that guide the client towards certain kinds of answers. Over decades of sessions, a self-reinforcing loop could develop. The facilitator expects certain content, the questions subtly invite it, and the client's subconscious delivers what is expected. Dolores addressed this criticism directly through her career. She emphasized that she let her clients lead, that she asked open-ended questions, that the convergence surprised her repeatedly, and that clients routinely produced information that contradicted her own explanations and beliefs. She described herself as the reporter, never the author. I present all three explanations because I believe this community is sophisticated enough to make a decision on your own. In session after session, across decades of work, Dolores' clients described the same triggering event, the detonation of nuclear weapons in 1945. The accounts were consistent and specific. When the atomic bombs were detonated, they did something that had never happened in the history of Earth. They cracked open the structure of matter at the subatomic level and released energy in a way that rippled outward through dimensions beyond the physical. The explosion was registered in densities of reality that scientists at Los Alamos had no idea existed. Civilizations operating in higher dimensions, what Dolores' clients called watchers or custodians or protectors, detected the detonation and recognized it as an existential threat that extended beyond the physical plane. This element of the story is consistent across every telling. The nuclear detonations were qualitatively different from any previous act of destruction in human history. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, these had occurred for millennia without triggering a cosmic response. But nuclear fission operates at the level of the atom, the level where physics intersects with fundamental structure of matter and energy. According to the sessions, damaging reality at this level produced a ripple effect that extended through dimensional boundaries that conventional weapons are unable to reach. The Watchers had been observing humanity for millennia without intervening. The atomic bomb changed the calculus entirely. The problem was the directive of free will. These beings operated under a law that prohibited direct intervention in the affairs of any sentient species. They could observe, they could send guidance through subtle channels. But they were unable to set foot on the surface, unable to reveal themselves, unable to physically prevent humanity from destroying itself, even though the destruction would damage dimensional structures far beyond Earth. So they devised a plan that honored the directive while addressing the crisis. They would ask for volunteers, souls from higher dimensions and densities, from other planetary systems, from states of existence that had no resemblance to physical human life. These souls would agree to incarnate on Earth through the normal birth process. Their memories would erase upon entry. They would live as ordinary humans, but the higher frequency they carried in their energy field, the vibrational signature of the dimensions they came from, would act as a tuning fork, raising the frequency of everything around them simply through their presence. They would be consciousness seeds planted in a civilization on the verge of self-destruction, and they would have no idea what they were carrying. Through thousands of sessions, Dolores identified 3 distinct waves of these volunteers, each arriving in a different era with different characteristics and a different function. The first wave arrived between the late 1940s and the early 60s. These were souls who came directly from Source or from very high-dimensional existences. Many had never incarnated in a physical body before. They had no experience of density, of gravity, hunger, or pain, of the overwhelming intensity of human emotion. They found Earth almost unbearable. They were the sensitives, deeply empathic, deeply uncomfortable, struggling with depression, anxiety, alienation, and a persistent aching feeling they were in the wrong place. Many experienced a desire to go home to a location they could never quite identify. Many struggled with the heaviness of physical existence in ways that manifested as chronic illness, addiction, or emotional volatility. The first wave were the pioneers. They arrived in the most hostile conditions. They bore the heaviest burden, and many of them spent decades feeling broken, inadequate, or defective without realizing that the difficulty they experienced was the friction of a high-frequency being trying to operate inside a low-frequency system. The pain was the mission. The sensitivity was the instrument. Many of them are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s now. Many have lived their entire adult lives wondering what was wrong with them, why the world felt so abrasive, why they could never quite fit into the structures that everyone else seemed to navigate with ease. Dolores' sessions gave them an answer that for many was the most profound relief they had ever experienced. Nothing was wrong. They were operating exactly as designed. The design simply included a level of discomfort that the mission required. The second wave arrived between the 60s and 80s. These souls came with a different assignment. They were described in the sessions as antennas or channels, beings whose primary function was to exist. They broadcast a higher frequency simply by being present. They lived quieter lives than the first wave. They gravitated toward healing professions, teaching, caregiving, creative arts, roles where their energy could reach others without drama or confrontation. They were the silent transformers. Many of them felt invisible. Many felt as though their lives lacked purpose or impact, but their purpose was their presence, and their impact was being measured in frequency rather than achievement. The third wave was arriving in the late 80s and continues into the present. Dolores called them the new children. These souls arrived with the most advanced capabilities and the least tolerance for outdated systems. They process information faster, they reject hierarchy instinctively, they see through social structures that previous generations accepted without question. They are wired for a world that has yet to be built. And their frustration with the existing world is a feature of the design rather than the flaw of their character. The third wave are the builders of the new earth. They arrived with the blueprints encoded in their consciousness. The first wave cleared the field, the second seeded it, the third wave built on it. And all three waves share a common experience: the amnesia, the memory of volunteering, of the council, of the dimensions they came from. All of it was erased upon entry into the earth dimensions. They have zero memory of their assignment. They have zero memory of choosing this. They experience themselves as ordinary human beings, having an inexplicably difficult time on a planet that feels foreign, hostile, and far denser than anything they were designed for. If you're listening to this episode and feeling a shock of recognition, which commonly happens when I refer to the three waves, if the description of the first or second or third wave sounds like a description of you, of your own experience on this planet, Dolores would tell you that the recognition is the beginning of remembering. The amnesia is designed to thin over time. The frequency you're carrying is designed to become conscious of itself. And the moment you begin to recognize what you are, the mission accelerates. The most dramatic revelation from this session, and the one with the deepest implications for everyone in this community, is the concept of the new earth. Multiple clients across years of sessions, having zero contact with each other, described a process in which the earth itself is undergoing a dimensional transition. The planet is raising its vibrational frequency. It is shifting from what Dolores' clients called third density consciousness into fifth density consciousness. And the shift is producing something extraordinary: a splitting. The old earth, the version operating at the lower vibrational frequency, characterized by fear-based consciousness, conflict, environmental degradation, manipulation, control, and the systems of control that have governed human civilization for millennia, continue on its trajectory. Those who are unable or unwilling to raise their frequency remain on this timeline. The new earth, a higher dimensional version of this planet operating at a vibrational frequency that is invisible to those on the old timeline, is being born simultaneously. It exists in a dimension that the old earth is unable to perceive. The transition is gradual. People are moving between the two without realizing it. The shift is occurring at the level of consciousness rather than at the level of geography. Dolores herself noted the parallel to the book of Revelation only as she was assembling her book. It was only as I was putting the book together that the similarity to the Bible became apparent. We're all talking about the same thing: a new heaven and a new earth, understood as a dimensional shift rather than a physical apocalypse. The sessions described physical symptoms associated with the transition: changes in sleeping patterns, memory fluctuations, increased sensitivity to food and environment, ringing in the ears, unexplained physical sensations, the feeling that time is accelerating. Dolores documented these symptoms across hundreds of clients and attributed them to the body's adjustment to increasing vibrational frequency, the physical vehicle struggling to keep pace with the dimensional upgrade occurring in consciousness. The clients described the new earth as a place of extraordinary beauty and peace, a world where the density and heaviness of the current reality have been replaced by a lightness, a clarity of quality of experience that the current human nervous system can truly approximate during the moments of deep meditation or peak spiritual experience. They described it as the world the volunteers came to help create, the destination toward which the entire three-wave operation has been moving since 1945. The splitting was described as a process already underway. Clients in sessions spanning decades described a gradual separation, a slow divergence of timelines that most people are unable to perceive because they're inside the process. Dolores compared it to a cell dividing. The original cell continues to exist while a new cell forms from the same material, carrying the same fundamental patterns but operating at a different frequency. Both versions are real. Both versions are complete. And neither version is aware of the other's existence from the inside. The sessions also described what determines which earth you experience: consciousness, vibration, the quality of your attention. Those who orient toward fear, conflict, and the lower frequencies of human experience remain in the reality that reflects those frequencies. Like attracts like. Those who orient toward love, expansion, and the higher frequencies of awareness are gradually, imperceptibly shifting toward the reality that reflects those frequencies. The choice is being made continuously, moment by moment, through the quality of the consciousness you inhabit, and most people are making the choice without realizing they're making it. It's been the focus of my channel for 8 years, ever since I read the Dolores Cannon material. The 3 waves and the New Earth are the most well-known elements of Dolores' work, but the full archive goes much deeper. Through her Conversations with Nostradamus series, 3 volumes picked up by CBS for a television special, Dolores claimed to have established contact with Michel de Nostradamus himself. She described the contact as occurring across time. Nostradamus speaking from his own era in 16th century France, communicating through the hypnotic bridge directly to Dolores in 20th century Arkansas. He explained that he had deliberately encoded his prophecies in obscure language to survive the Inquisition, and that centuries of interpreters had been misreading them because the French language had evolved beyond the meanings he intended. The 3 volumes contain over 1,000 quatrains interpreted through the direct contact. In Jesus and the Essenes, and They Walked with Jesus, clients in deep trance described lives as members of the Essene community and provided detailed accounts of Jesus' training, his relationship with the Brotherhood, and teachings that diverge significantly from Orthodox Christian doctrine. These sessions produced information about the Essene community that was later corroborated by archaeological discoveries, according to Dolores. In A Soul Remembers Hiroshima, a single client described dying in the atomic blast in such vivid, historically specific detail. The layout of the city, the quality of the light before the explosion, the sensation of the body dissolving, that the account produced visceral responses from historians who reviewed it. The client had no prior knowledge of Hiroshima beyond the most basic historical facts. Under somnambulistic trance, she described the city street by street, the daily rhythms of life in wartime Japan, the moment of detonation experienced from inside a human body at ground zero. This is one of the cases that convinced Dolores that the somnambulistic state was accessing something beyond the creative capacity of the conscious mind. The 5-volume Convoluted Universe series explored the most complex metaphysical concepts that emerged from the sessions and is probably my favorite: the origin and destruction of Atlantis, the construction of the pyramids, the nature of parallel universes and parallel lifetimes, the mechanics of time travel, the structure of other dimensions, the nature of the soul as a multidimensional being experiencing multiple incarnations simultaneously, and the creation of DNA as a cosmic technology containing dormant codes for multiple star systems. These codes, the sessions described, are being activated as the planetary shift progresses, producing the physical symptoms, the heightened sensitivity, and the expanded perception that many people in this community are experiencing that talk to me about every day. In the custodians, clients described in detail the civilizations that monitor Earth, beings who have been observing humanity since its creation, operating under strict non-interference protocols, occasionally making contact through methods designed to appear as natural phenomenon. The book explored abduction experiences through the lens of the subconscious, reframing them as voluntary soul agreements rather than violations. In Between Death and Life, clients describe the death process itself, what happens to consciousness as it separates from the body, the life review, the return to a state of expanded awareness, the planning of the next incarnation. This material aligns remarkably with the near-death experience research I covered in the Resurrection Machine episode, the same territory mapped from a completely different angle. 17 books, thousands of sessions, decades of transcripts, all of it produced by a grandmother in a reclining chair in Arkansas with a yellow legal pad and a tape recorder. I've spent 8 years on this channel exploring the relationship between consciousness and reality. I've read hundreds of Neville Goddard lectures, produced thousands of hours of meditations and activations and teaching episodes. I've investigated the Stargate program, the NDE research, the quantum consciousness model, the Tibetan Bardo teachings, the Hermetic tradition, and every major framework that addresses the question of what consciousness is and what it can do. And Dolores Cannon's work sits at the center of all of it because her sessions produced information that aligns with every single one of these traditions independently from people who had never studied any of them. The three waves align with the Law of One's concept of wanderers, higher density beings who incarnate on Earth to assist in the harvest. The New Earth aligns with the dimensional shift described in the raw material. The subconscious that Dolores contacted aligns with the higher self described in every mystical tradition. The custodians align with the watchers described in multiple ancient traditions. The convergence across sessions mirrors the convergence across traditions. Different angles producing the same picture. Whether Dolores Cannon's clients were accessing genuine cosmic information or expressing deep archetypal patterns from the collective unconscious, the result is the same. A coherent, detailed, internally consistent model of reality that places consciousness at the center of everything, that describes Earth as a school for souls in the midst of a dimensional transition, and identifies you, the person listening to this episode, as someone who may have volunteered for a mission you have spent your entire life trying to remember. Now, when I did my QHHT session, they asked me to imagine. I was using my imagination. I still have questions about the validity of my session. So one person's session could be questioned. What is interesting is the commonality in all of these sessions. I believe that's worth investigating. I believe the convergence is genuine. I believe that whether the source is cosmic or psychological, the wisdom contained in the sessions is real. And I believe that Dolores Cannon, a Navy wife, a grandmother, a woman who was nearly 50 before she began, and who spent the next 35 years recording what emerged from the depths of human consciousness, deserves to be recognized as one of the most important researchers in the history of consciousness studies. One more element I want to mention, the healings, because alongside the cosmological information, QHHT sessions produce something that Dolores herself always considered the most important aspect of her work: physical healing. Clients reported the instantaneous resolution of conditions that conventional medicine had been unable to address: vision restoring, chronic pain dissolving, tumors shrinking, diseases that had been present for years suddenly clearing during a single session. Dolores always said the same thing: I'm doing nothing. The subconscious is doing the healing. I'm just the facilitator who asks the questions. She would speak directly to the subconscious and ask it to heal. It was profound and powerful. Whether you attribute these healings to the higher self, to the placebo effect at an extraordinary depth, or to a mechanism that science has yet to identify, the reports are consistent and they are numerous. The healing components connect directly to the teachings at the heart of this channel. If consciousness can heal the body during a hypnosis session, then consciousness has authority over physical matter. If the subconscious can restructure cellular processes in real time, then the relationship between mind and body is far more direct than conventional medicine acknowledges. And if the same intelligence that heals the body can also access information about past lives, other dimensions, and the cosmic structure of reality, then the question of what consciousness is becomes the most important question any of us will ask. Dolores Cannon spent 35 years asking that question, and the answer she received session after session from people around the world was always the same. Consciousness is the fundamental substance of reality. You are a being of infinite scope, temporarily experiencing a life of deliberate limitation, and the limitation is a choice you made for reasons that are becoming clearer as the planet shifts into a new dimension of awareness. Dolores Cannon died on October 18, 2014 in Fayetteville, Arkansas. She was 83 years old. She left behind 17 books translated into more than 20 languages, a global community of QHHT practitioners carrying her work forward. She also left behind a question that I carry with me every day. If the same information keeps emerging from different people in different countries across different decades without coordination, what is the simplest explanation? That thousands of unrelated human beings under deep hypnosis independently invented the same elaborate fiction, or that they are all accessing the same signal? I think you know which answer resonates with you. I think you have known since the beginning of this episode. I think some of you have known since before you press play, because you felt pulled to this content the way you felt pulled to everything on this channel. A recognition that precedes understanding, a memory that surfaces before the mind can explain it. Because I have more starseeds and wanderers and volunteers that listen to my episodes than you could imagine. It's fascinating to me. They are attracted. If the three waves are real, if volunteers incarnated on Earth to raise its frequency, then the loneliness, the alienation, the persistent sense that this planet is harder than it should be, the feeling that you're carrying something you're unable to name, all of it has a purpose. All of it is the mission. And the moment you begin to recognize what you are carrying, the mission shifts from unconscious to conscious, from passive to active, from a frequency you broadcast in your sleep to a frequency you direct with intention. Maybe that's all this episode needed to do for you, was to awaken you, to activate you. That's what this channel is for. That is what the activations, the meditations, the investigations, the deep dives into consciousness are building toward, the remembering. The moment when the amnesia thins enough for the volunteer to recognize themselves. And if you're listening to this and feeling the recognition, if the description of the waves, the counsel, the frequency you're carrying sounds like something you've always known but never heard articulated, then consider this. You are listening to a channel about consciousness produced by someone who spent 8 years investigating the nature of reality, and you found it. You were drawn to it. Something in you recognized something in this material and moved toward it, with the precision of a homing signal locking onto its frequency. That movement, that pull toward this content, is the mission becoming conscious of itself. Dolores Cannon sat in a small room in the Ozarks mountains and recorded memories of volunteers as they surfaced one by one across 35 years. She did this with a tape recorder and a legal pad, and a patience that the modern world's almost lost entirely. She was recording you. Before we go, I want to invite you to join the Reality Revolution community. You can find the link in the description. We have weekly group coaching sessions and exclusive content you can't find anywhere else. You can find that link in the description at school.com/Reality Revolution. And you are cordially invited to a live in-person event I'm holding in Anaheim on July 24th through the 26th. It's going to be amazing. Over 3 days, we are going to connect with your future self, and you will shift into your greatest timeline. And we also have a special guest. Daryl Anka will be there. Tickets are running out, but still available. Get one now. You can find a link also in the description for the Anaheim event at www.brianscottlive.com/Anaheim. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com, and welcome to The Reality Revolution. There's a version of your life where everything you've been reaching for arrives, where the money flows, where love opens, where your body heals, where every step carries the frequency of the self you were always meant to be. That life exists, and the path to it has been 8 years in the making. This July, the Reality Revolution comes home to Anaheim. 3 full days of teaching, meditation, and timeline activation. 9 complete sessions designed to move you from the life you're living to the life that is waiting. Activate your pineal gland, meet your higher self, quantum jump into your greatest timeline, enter the bliss body healing state, step into the flow of large sums of money, open fully to love, shift into a higher density new earth. Friday night, the community celebrates together. Saturday evening, a special appearance from Daryl Anka. And by Sunday evening, you walk out as the version of yourself your future self has been waiting for.
I knew I had to be in the room because it's different from like listening to the meditation videos online.
It was really getting into yourself and how you feel and your timelines.
It's time at the event, and it really is. It's wonderful. So I would highly recommend to anyone, if you get the opportunity to do it, absolutely do it. It really is amazing.
The Reality Revolution live in Anaheim, July 24th, 25th, and 26th at the Hilton Anaheim. 3 days that will change the trajectory of your life. Early bird pricing is available now. Claim your seat at www.brianscottlive.com/Anaheim.